Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's regular council for September 28, 2022. And we've got a full slate today, and we'll start off by I'll by calling the meeting to order. And item 2, land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands of the Acadia First Nation, part of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we'll go to item 3, the playing of O Canada. Please stand. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. Do I have a mover? Oh, my apologies. Yes, CO.
Mr. Chair, there's been a request to add an item under new business for discussion, and it's municipal impacts from Hurricane Fiona.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call on Councillor Cushing. Okay. Seconded. So seconded with the amendments?
No, sorry, I have an additional.
Oh. Councillor Durkee.
The Mariner Center Board request.
Yes. Willette,
Mariner Center Board request.
can you give
Yes.
some additional detail?
Yes, there was documentation and a letter that we received with regards to the Mariner Center Board, a request from the Mariner Center Board.
So there is an item in camera related to that.
And I understand that, and this is not an in-camera item.
Okay, is there additional information? I mean,
I'm choosing to add that to the agenda with respect, Deputy Warden. That's my choice to do that, and I'm adding that.
okay.
I would like to add that.
Councillor Allen?
Oh, sorry.
Oh. Any other additions? So Councillor Cushing, just to clarify, you're moving the agenda with the amendments as stated? Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Durkee? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. So, item 5, any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to 6. Approval of the minutes. Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the minutes, I do notice under regular council on August 18th, under 6.2, it has that Councilor Daniel Allen approved. It's just a minor change. I think that's supposed to read that I motioned or I moved, because I don't have the power to approve. Nobody gives me the power to approve anything. So if I could just get that changed, pardon me. 6.2, application under policy R-002-03. It says it was approved by Councilor Daniel Allen, seconded by Sherry. I think it's just supposed to read moved, yeah.
Okay.
So beyond that, with the changes made to that, I would approve the minutes of August 8th, August 18th, and Committee of the Whole, and August 18th, regular council.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve the minutes with the slight amendment. A seconder? Councillor Hilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Councillor. So we'll move on to item 7, presentations of the audited financial statements. And before I call Ms. Banks to the council floor, I'll direct everybody's attention to 7.1, motions from the audit committee. There are 2, and it's an order that we would move and approve the first one potentially before we have the presentation from our auditor. Councillor Allen.
I'll make that motion. Just looking to see which one it was. Oh, you're gonna, I didn't want to get tripped up on this, and I just did.
The second batch should read as transfer.
Second, this transfer. Hold on, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I am on the wrong. I'm on the wrong thing here, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have to step away from this motion.
Okay. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we're talking about the motion to recommend that council transfer 400,000 of the surplus. Oh, did I? That council transfer 400,000 of the surplus be transferred to operating reserves and 1.18 million of the surplus be transferred to capital reserves.
Correct. We have a mover, do we have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Allen. Any additional conversation around that motion? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. And I'll call our auditor, Ms. Gloria Banks. Perfect. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to present the consolidated financial statements. And so we did meet with your audit committee on September 12th, and we went through these statements in detail. So my presentation tonight's just a higher level presentation of the results, but please feel free to ask questions if you have them. So I'll just refresh your memory that the consolidated financial statements take into consideration the municipality of the District of Yarmouth and all of its funds, as well as your proportionate ownership share of the municipally owned corporations, which include the Mariners Centre, the Yarmouth International Airport Corporation, the Yarmouth Area Industrial Commission, the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Management Authority, and the Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association. So your percentage of their operations are included in this report as well. And so I'm just going to go to page 1, which is the independent auditor's report. And so this is our letter to you on behalf of the audit. So it is a clean audit opinion. So the financial statements are for March 31st, 2022. It is our opinion that the accompanying consolidated financial statements presents fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality of the District of Yarmouth as at March 31st, 2022, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards, and that's the framework that you fall under. In terms of the basis for our opinion, we have to follow Canadian accepted auditing standards when we plan and implement our audit. And at the end of the day, we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. Management does have responsibility for this financial information. So they set the system of internal controls that they feel is appropriate throughout the year to make sure that the financial data is being properly accumulated. And their whole goal is to make sure that these financial statements are free of what we call material error, whether that's due to fraud or error. Also, in preparing the consolidated financial statements, management has to make sure that they've done a 12-month test. So they look out to make sure that you are what we consider to be a going concern, because that's how the financial statements are presented, which means that you would be able to realize your assets and pay out your liabilities if necessary. And then those charged with governance, that would be your audit committee and yourself as council, are responsible for the oversight of management's processes. On page 2 is the auditor's responsibility for the consolidated financial statements. And so our goal is to obtain what we call reasonable assurance that the statements are free of material error. And while reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, it's not a 100% guarantee that there might not still be an error in the financial statements. But in order for us to be able to get the risk as low as we possibly can, you can see that we focus our audit in the areas of highest risk, and that's where we spend the bulk of our time. We do audit all material areas, but we do spend more time in the areas of highest risk. We have to understand your internal control systems. We don't audit them, we don't give you an opinion on your internal controls, but we have to understand how they operate so that we're sure that the data is being properly accumulated. We look at your accounting policies to make sure that they do follow the Public Sector Accounting Standards Framework, and then the ones that you've chosen are the ones that you're actually following. We also have to make sure that we are in agreement with management's assessment of that going concern assumption, which we do. Then we evaluate the overall presentation of the financial statements, not just the numbers, but the related notes and disclosures that are at the back as well. And then, because you are consolidating all of those municipally controlled corporations, we have to be sure that we're comfortable with their audits, and the financial data that's being accumulated with yours is appropriate as well. And then we're required to communicate with your audit committee and then you as council as well. Dated today, hopefully you'll approve them when we're done our presentation. Page 3, under Public Sector Accounting Standards, management has to take responsibility for these financial statements in writing as well. So this is their page, which just goes through their responsibility for the financial information. I'm not going to go over it, but that is them taking responsibility for the financial information. And then if we turn to page 4, this is the consolidated statement of operations. So this is a reflection on your 2022 year up to the end of March of the revenues and expenditures of the municipality. You can see that the budget is included there for 2022 and the actual with a comparison to 2021. And the budget included in these financial statements will be different than the budget that you would have approved for rate setting purposes, because that one's set just on your operating fund, whereas this budget brings in all of the municipally controlled corporations, their budgets, as well as anything that happens in your reserves gets included in this budget as well. So just high level from a revenue perspective, you had originally set your budget at $11,884,000, and you came in at $13,338,000, and last year was $11,888,000. So you're up about $1.4 million over your budget and over the prior year. And there's a few things that are directly related to that increase. So your tax rates remain consistent, but your tax assessments would have been elevated over the prior year. So there have been a lot of changes in the assessments in your community, so you would have seen an additional amount in your tax revenue. As well, the deed transfer tax continued to be very strong through 2022, increasing over your budget and over the prior year. As well, during the year, you had the benefit of the provincial government giving you a double payment for your municipal financial capital grant. And so, sorry, not capital, capacity grant, there, thank you very much. So there's the first time they've actually given you the payment twice, but it was, I'm sure, well received, and all the municipalities in Nova Scotia got the additional payment this year. And also, you would have got a double payment under your Canada Community Building Fund as well. So that is the same as 2 years ago. You had a double payment from the federal government to the provincial government, then down to you. And this year, you got a double payment as well. And that money is used for capital projects when you get that money, whereas the other one is you can use in your general operations. And then your operations within your municipally owned corporations, specifically with the Mariner Center, operations were starting to return to normal this year, so their revenues would have been up as well. Their expenses were up during the year, whereas last year they were still quite impacted by COVID, so their operations would have been quite a bit lower than they were this year. On the expenditure side, your original budget was $11,488,000. You came in at $11,667,000, so you're only about $175,000 over your budget, which is pretty good on a almost $12 million budget. But you're up about $700,000 over the prior year. And so again, part of the reason you can see right in the very last line in that grouping is the recreational and cultural services. So that is the impact from the Mariner Center being back up and running, as well as your own recreational programs were back on side quite a bit this year as well. One you will see a decrease in is that under transportation services. So if you recall from last year, you would have had a large payment to the ferry terminal for your contribution for their operations. So that's why transportation is lower this year. And then there is a bit of increase in environmental health and public health as well. Some sewage costs were higher this year, as well as some of the costs to operate the Cape Verschoe facility. So in total, your annual surplus before unusual items this year is $1,671,000. Last year it was $949,000. And in a year where you're going to spend more money on capital projects, you will see that number be higher. Because when you get grant revenue for capital projects, it goes right directly into revenue, whereas it's set up as a capital asset and you'll only see the expense over time. You get all of the revenue immediately when you do your project. So that would be the same in any year when you have a lot of capital projects underway. And you had a small gain on disposal of tangible capital assets. So your annual surplus for the year is $1,675,256. At the beginning of the year, your accumulated surplus, so the accumulated book value, was $32,067,168. And at the end of this year, your accumulated surplus is $33,742,424. And if you turn over to page 5, that's the same number at the bottom of page 5 as well. The two pages must tie together. So this is the consolidated statement of financial position. So these are your assets and your liabilities, again at March 31st. And you'll see the top half is considered to be a financial asset. So those are your assets that are readily convertible to cash. Whereas below the line, you'll see the non-financial assets. That's all the investment in your infrastructure. You're not going to sell your buildings or your equipment to generate cash to pay your bills. Those are there to provide services to your residents. But if we look at your financial assets, you can see the total this year is $19,430,000. Last year it was $16,735,000. So you're up about $2.5 million over the prior year. And a lot of it is right directly sitting in your cash position, which we'll see in a couple pages what generated that. But of that $17 million that you have in cash, there's $6.8 million that's set aside in your capital reserve for your future capital projects, and there's almost $6 million in your operating reserve, as well set aside for your operating projects of the future. So it's not all cash that's just available. It has been designated for future uses. In terms of your tax receivable, it is actually down from the prior year, so you're in a very strong position when it comes to your percentage of your taxes receivable as a portion of your levy. That's very strong. And then you'll see a few changes in your other receivables. Your water supply lending program was more utilized this year, so the amounts that have yet to be collected has grown a little bit over the prior year. On the liability side, your liabilities this year are $9,639,000. Last year, they were almost an even $9 million. And you can see there's a couple areas that are a bit higher. So your deferred revenue, so that's money that you've received that you're going to spend in the future that's been designated for a specific project. And the largest portion of that is the money that you got from the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly your gas tax money. And so whenever you get money that's specifically designated for a project of the future, we set it aside and you're going to use it in the future. And again, you did get double payment this year, so that's part of the reason why it's grown. And then in terms of your long-term debt, there was no new debt this year, so the decrease is a result of your principal repayments during the year. And I just wanted to note that all of the municipally owned corporations, none of them have external long-term debt. This is all the municipalities. So the only form of debt they have is in their general payables. So at the end of the day, your net financial asset position is $9,791,088 versus last year's $7,730,730. So you're up $2 million in your net financial asset position, which is a very strong position. So then your non-financial assets, those ones that you're not going to sell to generate cash, The net book value of your tangible capital assets, so that's not the original spend, but that's the amortized amount, this year is $23,629,000. So you spent almost $1 million in capital infrastructure growth during the year. The biggest portion was for $470,000 for the Millennium One building that you worked on. And then there was vehicles and additions in the municipally owned corporations as well, but the biggest portion was for the Millennium One building. So your total non-financial assets are $23,951,336. And again, your accumulated surplus is $33,742,424, but $23 million of that is invested in your infrastructure. So those are the two most important pages. Page 6 is a continuity of your net financial asset balance, and it will always start with your annual surplus of the year, and then it will be reduced by your purchases of your capital assets. You'll recall that you spent about $1 million. And then we bring back in your amortization of those assets at $1.4 million because that's a non-cash item. So at the end of the day, you generated $2,060,358 this year in your non-financial asset position. Page 7 is a similar type page. It's a continuity of your cash flows. Again, it will always start with your cash that was generated from your operations. So that's your annual surplus of $1.6 million. We do add back amortization as the non-cash. And then all the changes that happen on your statement of financial position that we looked at earlier, when you collect your receivables or you pay your payables, that will change your operating cash flow. So from your operations, you generated $3,963,000, and you used $1 million to purchase more capital assets, and you used $350,000 to pay down your debt. And so at the end of the day, you generated $2,531,000 more of cash this year. Okay? So the remaining pages are the supporting notes and disclosures. And as I said, I've already gone over them in detail with your audit committee, so I won't go over them here. But one of the topics that I'll just bring up that we discussed with your audit committee is the new section that's coming in for March 31st, 2023 for asset retirement obligations. So that's the only big change for next year.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. Are there any questions from council for Ms. Banks, our auditor? Okay, there being none, I'd just like to turn our attention quickly to the second motion that was contained in the attached document. And perhaps before Councillor Holton.
So when it talks about along with amendments, can someone clarify what that means before I make a motion to accept it with amendments?
I can answer that, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Yeah, Madam CEO.
So, Mr. Chair, that's reflective of the recommended transfers that were above.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll move that we accept the draft non-consolidated and consolidated statements of March 31st, 2021, along with the amendments previously moved.
Okay. Oh, 2022. It reads 2021, but that should read 2022. My apologies. We missed that one.
You're killing me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just adds to the drama.
Yeah.
This evening. So do we have a seconder for that motion? Yeah, Councillor Allen. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. And thank you for an informative report, and looking forward to working with you over the next year. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to new, there's nothing in old business, which is item 8. Item 9, new business, would be recommendations from the Committee of the Whole. 9.1.1, notification of proposed land-based marine plant application for Lower West Pubnico. It's the pleasure of council. Councillor Hilton? No, yeah, no, it's okay, I was just... Yeah, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we send a letter of acknowledgement and thanks be sent to the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture for letting us know that this was going on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allen. We have a mover, do we have a seconder? Councillor Durkee seconds the motion. Any further conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. 9.1.2, request for decision, J-Class Road Cost Sharing Nomination. Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to accept the recommendation or make a motion to accept the recommendation for the J-Class Road Cost Sharing Nomination on the following 3 roads. Number 1, Hillside Drive, number 2, Hector Street, and 3, Churchill Street.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Durkee. We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hilton. Any additional conversation on the motion? Councillor Durkee, I think your mic's just on. Yep. Okay, we're all good. Okay, there being none, I'll call for the vote. Question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. 9.1.3, Municipal Streets and Sidewalks Bylaw, S-089-22, first reading. It's a pleasure of council. Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to the Municipal Streets and Sidewalks Bylaw S-089-22 and proceed to second.
We have a motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Allen seconds the motion. Any additional conversation?
What's the motion?
To approve the amendments to the Municipal Streets and Sidewalks Bylaw, and I believe that would be forwarded this is the final reading?
First reading.
Oh, this is the first reading. It says proceed to first reading. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I said second reading. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a clarification. It is the first reading. And Councillor Allen, you're okay with that? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. 9.1.4, Streets and Sidewalk Policies and Procedures, S-088-12, and this is a simple repeal based on the moving forward with the new, with the amended bylaw. We have a...
I'm off now, go.
Councillor Allen.
I'd like to make a motion that we repeal the Streets and Sidewalks Policies and Procedures S-088-12.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hilton seconds the motion. Any additional conversation? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. 9.1.5, thank you letter concerning Travel and Media Association Conference. What's the will of council? Councillor Durkee.
I'd like to make a motion that we send a letter of thanks and congratulations to the Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association regarding the recent Travel and Media Association Conference held in Yarmouth, which was a huge success.
Agreed, and thank you, Councillor Durkee, for moving the motion. So seconder, Councillor Cushing, seconds the motion. Any additional conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. 9.1.6, request for decision, County Crescent Paving Contract Award. It's a pleasure of council. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we... Pardon me?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to make a motion that we award the contract to Aberdeen Paving Limited in the amount of $297,943.42 plus HST, funded through the Capital Investment Plan strategy, leveraging gas tax funds.
Thank you,
Wherever
Councillor
possible.
Allen. Yeah. We have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hilton. And any additional conversation on the motion? I'll just add that I'm very pleased as a member of the council to have this work going forward, and it's an improvement to the business park that allows the FedEx project to come to full fruition. So thank you, council. That's additional jobs in the area, and I think it's thanks to staff as well for helping promote business and certainly move the community forward. So having said that, I'll call a vote, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, council. 9.1.7, citizen appointment to Joint Police Advisory Committee. It's a pleasure of council. Councillor Durkee.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Doris Landry as the municipality of the District of Yarmouth's representative to the Joint Police Advisory Committee for a 2-year term.
And a seconder on the motion? Councillor Cushion seconds the motion. Any additional conversation about the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, council. So we do have, and I'll insert it here, I think that's appropriate, Madam CEO, the 2 additions to the agenda?
I think we've got recommendations from Heritage Advisory first, Mr. Chair.
And then I'll go to that, okay, yeah, okay. So 9.2, recommendations from Heritage Advisory Committee. What's the pleasure of council? Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that, as per the Heritage Advisory Committee's recommendation, that the terms of reference for committee members be amended to attend all meetings. Any committee member absent for 3 consecutive meetings without leave of the committee shall be deemed to have vacated their seat.
Okay, we have a mover on that motion, a seconder, seconded by Councillor Allen. Any additional conversation? Councillor Durkee, your mic's still on, yeah? I do that often, too. So seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so we have a couple of additions to the agenda. The first addition was an item concerning Fiona. What's the pleasure of council? Okay. Yes, Councillor Allen.
Well, we've all seen the news, and we all have seen what can happen when I want to call it a catastrophe hits our province. And I know that there may be needs coming in the future, or maybe around here, there may be needs up there right now, so I'm inclined to, I'm not sure how we go about doing it, but I would like to make a motion that, if there's a request coming from other municipalities for things that maybe we have or we can use to help them, that we allow our CAO to move stuff around to, I'm not sure what other municipal, I know I'm in the middle of trying to make a motion, but I'm not sure what they may need, but we may have things here that they may need that we may be able to offer to help. So I think I just would like to make a motion that we do that, I guess. I'm not sure how to word it. Maybe you can help me with the wording, but
It may be better because we're not talking about a financial piece, maybe just give some general direction to the CEO, and if she feels she needs to come back to council for a motion, like if something comes up that's a financial or a big loan of equipment that may have financial implications, that she'd come back to us, but maybe
okay,
she'd have the
well,
understanding.
and I'm fine with
she
that
can
as
put her
well.
feelers out.
I don't need to make a motion. I just know that, we've seen the devastation that's going on in Cape Breton right now.
Absolutely.
And I know the federal government is putting money towards it and things like that, and I just, if there's something, if we have equipment or some type of services here that we can offer them, if they're in need and they come looking, I would just like us to be able to make that ready for them.
Yeah. Is that okay by you, Madam CEO?
Yep, so just, Mr. Chair, if I'm understanding correctly, so if another municipal unit that was impacted by the hurricane puts an ask out maybe for some extra elbow grease, human resources, or if we have a piece of equipment that they might need, that we can deploy that, and if it's a significant situation, just to come back to council for a check-in.
Sure.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Yes, Councillor Cushing. Okay. Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't a move motion. So it was just some direction, some conversation about the issue. Thank you. Okay, the second item that was added to agenda concerns the Mariner Centre, and Councillor Durkee.
And make sure you remind me to turn my mic off after
Yep.
this one. Thank you. Apparently, there was correspondence sent to council on September 2nd looking for approval of the board's decision of who we place on the Mariner Center board, and we have not responded to that. So they had a steering committee that was set up to choose who they felt was the best member to sit on their board, and they're looking for us to ratify that agreement. So as per the letter sent September 2nd, I'd like to make a motion, please, to approve the Mariner Center Board request to have Mark Brophy sit on the Mariner Center Board as recommended by the steering committee.
So my understanding is Chair, is that we haven't had that conversation. There's an in-camera conversation in there about the appointment, and but I guess you know, the motion's on the floor. Is there a seconder to the motion? Okay, so we've got a seconder. So the motion's on the floor. Additional conversation? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do sit on the board. I knew there was a recommendation coming forward, but I also know that sitting on the council it's been talked about before that the final decision on who our representation is comes from this council, and that the recommendation from the Mariner Center board obviously is considered. But we have not had a council meeting since that letter has come through. So I see in camera, we have a discussion about this. So until we have that discussion, I'm sure I won't be supporting until council actually decides if this is the person we are putting through or not. So for me, I thought we were going to have a discussion amongst council. I know it's in camera, and it's probably privacy and I don't know if you call it personnel reasons as to who has applied. So I'm not, and I voiced this before, I'm not about to rubber stamp just a recommendation. If it's a council's decision on who represents, then I think council should have that discussion. I think that the recommendation from the Mariner Center Authority Board will hold a lot of weight, but until we have that discussion, I'm not ready to approve anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Additional conversation? Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is my understanding that when there is a board sitting for a unit that we fund, that the board comes forward with the recommendations, as you've mentioned, and that we approve or not approve the recommendations coming from that board. I also understand that the process is actually, my understanding is actually, it's not an in-camera process, and that this is a volunteer board, and that the member who they have chosen has been wanting to sit on this board a couple of times through. So I will be supporting the motion at this time because I feel that the Mariners have made a very good choice, and I really don't think that because of the due diligence of the steering committee and the board, that we should really be vetoing the decision that was made by using due process by the Mariner Center board.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. Any additional conversation, discussion? Yes, Councillor Cushion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Councillor Durkee, I appreciate what you're saying, and Mark Brophy is certainly a well-qualified person to sit on such a committee. But as Councillor Allen was saying, I think it's a discussion that we should have first before we make an actual what's the proper word I'm looking for? An actual confirmed appointment of Mr. Brophy to the Mariners Board. So I certainly like to have a discussion around it sort of thing before we make that decision. But again, Councillor Durkee, Mark Brophy is well qualified for such an appointment. But however, again, like I said, I'd like to have our council sit around and discuss as such, especially in an in-camera session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Additional comments from council? Yes, Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support the motion in question, but again, it is, and I don't necessarily know if I fully understand the process that's going on here, because we're talking specifics about an individual against other individuals that we should be doing in camera. So I think there's a huge gap in the process that's happened. For that reason, I want to make a motion that we table this until after the in-camera meeting for a decision.
So that would be a subsidiary motion that would require a seconder, and that would put off the vote on Councillor Durkee's motion until after the in-camera procedure. I think that's correct, is it, Madam CEO? Yes, and it's not debatable, Mr. Chair. And it's not debatable, okay. Yes, okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder to delay the vote until after the in-camera session. Any additional conversation, discussion about the motion that's on the floor now, to delay the vote on the primary motion, I'll say. No additional? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. So the next item on the agenda is correspondence for action, and it's Melbourne 10.1.1 Melbourne Community Hall grant application. C.O. Brooks, speak a bit to that, please.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the spring, when council was developing their statement of estimates for the year, we knew that the Melbourne Community Hall is a municipally owned asset, and it's under lease to a community group, and the conditions of the lease set out who's responsible for repairs and maintenance and those sorts of things. And the community group, as you know, hasn't been able to raise funds during COVID, and in addition to that, they've had a fire inspection by our fire inspector at the site, and a number of items were identified that needed to be rectified. In the application package, you'll see that the community group has done all the work with the exception of removing the wood paneling and replacing it with gyprock, crack filling it, and painting it. And so the group is asking the municipality to lean in and partner with them on ticking this homework item off of the list. I've spoken with our fire inspector and indicated that we're in the middle of our finance cycle, and even though in the spring we kind of knew this was coming, we didn't know the amount, and so we're not resourced to fund this now. So my recommendation to council is that you approve it out of your 2023-2024 grants. The fire inspector will know that that's been done if you agree to do that, and then there'll be no issues with respect to compliance, and the community group will oversee the work. We'll just make the contribution. So that's my recommendation, Mr. Chair, to council.
Okay, thank you. And the amount is?
Oh, sorry. $9,665.75.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of council? Councilor Durkee.
I'll make that a motion that we approve the request from the Melbourne Community Center for $9,665.75 to, in order to correct the violations reported by the fire inspector.
And that's in the 23,
23
24.
budget.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Seconder and Councillor Allen. Any additional conversation on the motion? Yes, Councillor Cushion. Oh, yeah, we got
Thank
you.
you, Deputy Warden. Listen, I think it's a great idea, but is there not a, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm out of bounds here maybe, isn't there some type of, for lack of better words, paint that they can put on that to make it fire resistant, fire retardant, instead of spending a large amount of money?
So it's actually more expensive, Mr. Chair, through you to
Yes.
Councillor Cushing, to use that paint product. It's a
Okay,
very
okay.
specific type of paint that has to
Yes.
be applied in a certain number of coats and
Yes,
and
okay.
so on and so forth. So they've opted with this method of remediation.
Okay, good. I just thought there was something there.
Thank you, Councillor Cushion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, and I'm going to, through you to CAO Brooks, so just to clarify, since we have brought this up to the fire marshal, there won't be any interruption in operations of what they, because I know they're trying to get back to, you know, post-COVID activities and things like that, and I'm pretty sure this was a concern, that there may be a possibility of a delay in operations, so this won't affect operations for them?
Correct. The fire inspector will not close the facility.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. So we have a mover and a second, or any additional conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried, thank you. So we're moving on to 10.2, for information, and there are a couple items there. Anybody from council have anything to add to those two items? Okay, they are just for information after all, so thank you very much. Item 11, reports, the CEO report. So I'll turn to our CEO to speak to that briefly, and then we'll follow up with some questions.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So it is a quarterly report, so it includes the financial statements, the motions of council, and the update on your business plan, where we are tracking along with respect to the activities you've directed us to be working on this year. We're in good shape. I would suggest that we have recognized and realized and experienced the inflation that everybody in the community has, but we are moving along. We're not experiencing any major issues with respect to supply chain in terms of getting our work done, although there are some minor inconveniences, and of course, pricing is a challenge this year.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Any comments or questions from the CEO's report? Okay, there being none, I will just, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Allen, no, it's all right.
I was just going to make the motion to accept the CAO's report as circulated.
Absolutely. We've got a mover and a seconder in Councillor Hilton. And before we vote on the motion, I'd just like to certainly state again, we have in the past, I mean, if folks out there certainly take the time, I think it's worth taking the time to review the CEO's report, and it does indicate that council's working well as a sort of a cohesive group, and our strategic plan, we're following through on it, council and staff, we're getting things done, and the population's ticking up a little bit, partly because of that, partly because of external factors, and so, I think we should all be pleased together, and we're midway through our term, and things seem to be going well. So having said that, I'll call for the vote, and all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, council. So we're moving on to reports, additional reports. 11.2 2, legal entities, and what I'll do is you know, as you want to report out on those entities, you may by just lighting up your speaker or your microphone. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the Mariner Center Authority Board, we just recently had a meeting. Unfortunately, I left my notes in my bag, but I did want to say, on a very positive note, and Councillor Hilton can attest to this, is that the splash park hasn't had an official opening, but has run for 2 weekends, I think, for sure. I believe they're going to be in the process of shutting it down for the winter now, but the fencing is going up, and great job by a community group to get this fundraised for and in place, and looking forward to next summer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Hilton. And that's, I think it's a good project all the way around. I mean, a lot of community involvement, and so the funds came from lots of different spots, and it was nice that they got to sort of test it out before this year, before, you know, beginning it and you know, having it roll out in earnest next year. So thank you. Additional reports. Councillor Durkee.
Okay. Don't forget to turn
No,
my light
gotcha.
up. So the Western Counties Regional Library, we had a meeting, and I'm happy to say that the agreement with the staff has been ratified, and all paperwork has been signed and moving forward. They're very, very busy. What they're finding is that because of COVID, what has happened is there's a lot of shipment of books going out of the library to, I went in and looked, there's massive amounts of boxes that are being shipped to all over Nova Scotia, where people still want to have a book in hand, and it's costing a lot of money for shipping. As we all know, the cost of shipping has gone up immensely. But otherwise, I feel very fortunate that we have a great staff who are pivoting whenever they have to in terms of what's been happening, and things are changing in our libraries today. So kudos to them. And while I'm on here, the Yarmouth and Acadian Shores, again, we know that there was some controversial topics brought up by the Houston government, and which was the ferry, of course, and the fact that he was disappointed by the results of the ferry, even though the ferry season had not ended. And as well, there was a comment made by MLA Maslin that there was that the ferry could be canceled, and so what people have to understand is the way that was supposed to come across is that is, and it will always be, an option. And I'd like to say that we all hope for Nova Scotians that is an option that's not even being considered at this time. And so what we're hearing is that there will be a review, and we're hoping that it will be positive. What I can tell you is that our numbers for tourism from the Levy hotels have been up 2% over 2018, I think it was 2018, which has been our highest year to date before cancellations of any ferry, and the Airbnbs are up 170%. So for me, the information that I took away from our meeting is that we've had a really successful tourism season in Yarmouth County, and the point is that we get people coming across the ferry staying with us for less than 2 full days. And so where do they go? They go to the rest of the province. And so there's been an uptick, I know, from family members in Lunenburg saying how busy they were in Lunenburg. So I think the results that have been posted have only been until the end of May, but I think once the results come out from the end of August, you'll see that Nova Scotia has had a very successful tourist season, and we do have to thank having that ferry to help that service. So letters have been sent from us and from Yarmouth and Acadian Shores, from tie-ins, to the provincial government to say that, the canceling the ferry service at this time should not even be an option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. Additional reports? Yes, Councillor Cushing.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like to mention about the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Park. When I became chairperson in 2020 of the Solid Waste Park, one of the big issues was the ongoing of rope. The rope is very heavy. It costs the fishermen money to dispose of it. It costs the municipality a lot of money to ship it to Queens. Our committee had instructed our manager at the waste park to search out some sources, which he done. We've been stockpiling rope. One of the concerns about the stockpile of rope was it was dirty, so we really couldn't export it and whatnot. And I had suggested that we just take our loader and shake the rope up and let the rain wash it out. But, you know, in following that, we had quite a amount of rope there. And right now, there is a market for that rope. I think it's Denmark, or I believe it's Denmark. And they have containers brought to our solid waste park. They pay our solid waste park to load the containers, and they are responsible for bringing it to Halifax, to put it on a ship and take it to Denmark for recycling. And what they're doing is making what's it called, the cases for the phones, cell phones and stuff with it. And it's such a demand for it, they're bringing rope as far away as Alaska.
Wow.
So right now, the solid waste park, for those who are listening, the solid waste park is accepting all rope for no charge. They can bring it there, and it was a costly expense for us to ship it to Queens, and now there's no charge, and they're paying to handle it all and take it over there. One question that was brought up is the technology that they use in Denmark or Norway. I forget exactly whereabouts it did go, but if they have that technology, why can't we? And there was, I forget how many tons we would have to entertain. I think it's 30,000 tons of rope. And you take it for the province of Nova Scotia, the province of Prince Edward Island, province of New Brunswick, the province of Newfoundland, and of course our neighboring countries along Maine and Massachusetts, and along that area there where a lot of rope is also used. We are in a very prime location to accept all that stuff, and if we can get the technology to do it ourselves. So that's something our waste park is certainly looking at trying to establish. So I'm not the chairperson no more there, but anyway, I'm sure I'll be able to keep our council updated on the progress of that. But it's very good news that we finally found a market for that rope. And I don't know how many people have ever been to the landfill lately and seen the pile of rope. It was incredible. So the waste park has saved us a lot of money by sending that to Queens. So which is a very good news thing, and it's not costing us anything to get rid of it. So let's bring that rope to the landfill free of charge. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Any additional reports from the legal entities? I guess it's legal entities. Have we got the right? Yes, I do. Yeah. Correct terminology. Okay, we'll move on to 11.3, the advisory entities. So, okay. Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Doctor Recruitment and Retention Committee had a meeting on September 20th. Some of the highlights were that it's been a very busy summer, and by that, We've had some site visits and for family medicine and some specialists. We had a new group that have settled in for the residents at the hospital, and for the first time, there was a Tuscan Island tour, and we had 65 to 75 people wanting to go, and there was a waiting list, and these are medical professionals that wanted to go on that trip. The first conference that our team will be attending is in St. Andrew at the end of September. We are still looking for a number of doctors. We need OB-GYN doc, we need family docs, family medicine doctors, we still need anesthesia. So just some interesting statistics. There are a number of doctors, so a few, 1, 2, 3 new docs coming our way, and 2 in Clare, and there are more site visits coming, and there were 58 recruited in the Western Zone, so that's all the way from Kentville around to Bridgewater, and 50% were recruited, 25% retention, 25% were admin. So there's a lot of things happening, thankfully. But again, we all have to remember we are competing against the world. So it's not easy. And so there was a large discussion about incentives and what we can't provide financial incentives because the province provides financial incentives, and anything that we would provide, they would take away. So that makes no sense. What we know is that Barrington and Clare both subsidize the rent, which can be done, can be done for new physicians coming in. And one piece of information is that Barrington, they give $60,000 per year for the incentives for new doctors in their area to cover the costs of the rent. So what's the problem with family doctors coming here and settling here is that there's moderate overhead, and it costs a lot of money. And what's happening is doctors, first of all, do not want to take on the number of patients that our older doctors have taken, like 5,000. That's not even considered. It's closer to 700. And the costs to running their own office are very expensive. And that's why so many doctors are not choosing to become family doctors. They're choosing to become emerge doctors and hospitalists where they have their schedule and then they go home. So we talked about the provincial government really needing to look at alternatives to the present programs for family docs. And that some of the other incentives that people might be able to, that municipalities might be able to help with were overhead costs, services, tech, and equipment. And so I think that's the overwhelming theme that's happening when doctors are looking to go somewhere, that if there's an incentive, like Clare has, they have reduced rents for 3 years, then they're more likely to go to those places where they can get reduced costs. I know that there were comments about some doctors saying that they can't, they're hardly breaking even with the costs, the administrative costs associated with running an office. And they don't want to run an office. They want to practice medicine. And so I think it's something that will be coming to us in the future for discussion. And I know the other thing that's going to be coming forward is renewal of the amount that we have been contributing towards the cost of the doctor recruitment and retention navigator. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. Additional reports? Oh. Councillor Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great work, Patty. The Yarmouth Recreation Committee. I am still the chairperson of the Recreation Committee, and we're doing a strategic plan. And talking with our recreation director, he's been there since 2005 and never had a strategic plan in place, so we're making some huge steps there. and trying to bring things up to par. Let me see. On October 4th, local volunteers of the fire hall, there will be 33 volunteers being recognized for their work. And at the end of October, there is an evaluation from Dell University before the program even starts, to see where we are, and then after the report is done, to see what the results are going to be, or what we're looking for. So, which is I always thought, why do a survey before? But once that was explained, it made some good sense. And October 12th, councillors in committee will meet for a recreation strategic plan. That's what the hope is. I said, I hope it's not after October 12th, because I won't be here. But anyway, also would discuss was, I think, did our CAO receive that letter from Recreation yet about the sunscreen, providing sunscreen at facilities? Oh, okay, maybe I won't report on that now then. So, okay, but I've also asked Frank to look into, for hiring summer staff, the applications this summer was very low in people looking for employment. So I've asked Frank that perhaps what we should look into, and we'll speak to the committee about this first, is what's the reason why we're not getting many applications for summer jobs? And that can be expanded. Why are a lot of companies and businesses looking for people to hire? Am I in the understanding that everybody in Yarmouth County is working? You know that we need workers. We're bringing immigrants into work, and they're doing a fantastic job. But so we got to look at the cycle. What's going on? Why aren't people applying for jobs, and especially summer students? I mean, it's expensive to go to university, and I think he usually has anywhere 50 to 75 people applications before COVID, and I think this year, correct me if I'm wrong, Frank will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had 25, and he hired 17 or 18. Why? How come there's not more looking for jobs? So an interesting point. So I just wanted to bring council up on that, and certainly report back to council as we further investigate this type of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Additional, yes, Councillor Durkee. Yeah.
I'm on a roll tonight. Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Cushing said, that yes, it is very difficult to hire staff in the summer. Being on a nonprofit organization board, we had the same issue, that there were very few people who applied, and we actually had to send back funds from one of the summer grants because we couldn't find anybody. So that's pretty sad. But I do want to give a little report from our last Heritage Advisory Committee, which was exciting. We're really pleased with the where we've gone this year and making changes and improvements. So one being the grants that we are giving out to Heritage, people who are signed up for Heritage, and that we'd like to encourage other people who have Heritage homes to consider becoming registered as a municipal heritage site. The other discussion we had is, we know that people are really interested in history when they travel. We all travel, particularly you, Deputy Warden, and what do people look for is they like to learn about the history of a location. And one of the most popular attractions in the town of Yarmouth is their walking tour, where they walk around and look at all the houses. So we started discussing, what could we do in the municipality that would be similar? And we do have some areas that have clusters of heritage homes, and one in particular would be Port Maitland. And what we'd like to do possibly is maybe next summer, if we can get a student to devise a walking tour of one, like starting with Port Maitland, and then maybe of our heritage designated places, or even if they're not designated, then moving to, or a driving tour where people could drive around and look at our heritage properties and the history behind them. So that's something in the works maybe for next summer that we'll get moving on. We were pretty excited about the thought of maybe moving forward and adding to the experiences of people coming to Yarmouth County.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just update on the REMO Executive Committee. We didn't meet this month due to just not being able to get enough people together, but I spoke with Shane Strong over the weekend. He was in the Emergency Management Center taking hurricane updates. He was very pleased to go home early on Sunday with little to no damage in Yarmouth County. So we handled the storm very well. We were lucky that way, and you know, we're thinking of everyone else in the province who didn't fare as well. So we are looking to have a date early in October to finally get back together and do some planning on training and policies, procedures, and things that he's going to bring back to the table that we can kind of move that committee forward. For Joint Police Advisory Committee, it's nice to see that we elected a new citizen rep, but to be honest, we have not had a meeting in months, so I don't know if the CAO can provide any. We talked about where we might move with that, but if it's time to reach out to our partners and say that it's time to get moving.
Madam CEO?
So I think part of the problem is we should have a regular day and time for that meeting, and it should be on people's calendars in advance, because as Councillor Hilton has said, we're struggling with quorum. The next meeting is on the calendar, is it not, Councillor Hilton? Is it tentatively set?
I don't think so.
No. So we can approach it one of two ways. Informally, I can reach out to Shane and ask him to send out a
No.
doodle poll.
Not REMO.
Oh, sorry.
Police Advisory.
Police advisory, yes. So Councillor Hilton and I have talked about that, and what we'd like to do is just have a chat with the elected representatives in the CAO in Argyle and talk about the committee. So it's, I spoke with the CAO in Argyle about that this week. He's on board for that, and I know Jenny is working on pulling that meeting together. So hopefully that can reinvigorate the process and get us back on track.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Councillor Cushing.
I don't have any more reports to elaborate on, but I certainly want to elaborate on Councillor Durkee on her heritage walking tours and sites. And again, I'll go to Port Maitland. Port Maitland has been known to be built off of night fishing. And if you get some stories on that down at the wharf, it would be amazing the stories that could be told, how Port Maitland became the fishing village that it is, and very successful. Another one is our Pembroke Dyke, the Chicago Dyke on the Chicago River. There's a mural there that a couple of local citizens had hired Tootsie Eamon to paint of the old dike, what it looked like, and actually we have one of those murals in our community hall, and there's lots of stories there about the old school, about the artist, the Lucy Hill artist, the wharf, the Chicago Point Wharf now, and so there's a lot of history that could be expanded on that. Then you can go to Fish Point, which is one of the first settlements in the Yarmouth area, and actually I have ancestors who were part of that group that was there, right? That was quite a thriving community. And then you go on to the Yarmouth Bar of the Working Wharves in Chicago Point too, sort of thing, right? And you got the Sanford Drawbridge, and all the fishing activity was there. You know, there's just so much that can be done. I mean, we already have our Cape Fichu Lighthouse has been very well visited, but we have other areas that can be done. Pinckney's Point certainly has a good history, you know, and down at Town Point with, you know, there's so much around that. Get tourists on a bus, take them to different places. You could spend 2 or 3 days just talking about this stuff. So it's a great thought. I hope that we pursue it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. And that is one of our strengths, certainly, is both of you identified. We've been here relatively in North America, at least, a long time, this end of the province, and there's there's a rich history and with a lot of rich architecture and you know, a proud fishing history and industrial history too. So anyway, thanks to both of you for those comments. Any additional comments from council around the advisory? I will say, just comment on the audit committee. Obviously, we did have an audit committee meeting fairly recently, and that culminated in our auditor's report here this evening. So the committee worked very successfully with our professional auditors on bringing the report forward and so forth with the suggested motions that we passed tonight. I too thank you, Lauren, for the Yarmouth Recreation Committee report. You chair, and I'm on that, and it's going well, and all those things that you mentioned are very relevant. The other one is the Planning Advisory Committee, and we do have a regularly scheduled meeting coming up, and looking forward to that. And again, we have an LUB land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy review underway. So it's there's been a little lull in action over the summer, but that committee's typically very busy, and will be certainly going into the winter months and spring as we finalize those changes. And again, that will obviously be coming to council for a robust conversation. So looking forward to all that. Councillor Cushing.
I think Nick had his light on first. Did you, Nick? Or is it? Nope, you shut it off. Just one last comment I'll make. I'll toot our own horn. Since our last election, 2020, I think our council has been very active and been very proactive and been very busy in making things happen within our municipality and also within the county of Yarmouth. So, personally, I think we've done a great job, and thanks to all the councillors for their input and whatnot, and the support we've had from the public and other councils. And it's just been really, I think we've been very successful. Thank you.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed it as well. Agree. Any additional comments from either the advisory or the ad hoc categories for reports? Okay. There being none, the next item is 12 in camera. I'll look for, I think, probably a motion to recess for 10 minutes is in order. Councillor Hilton? Councillor Hilton moves, the seconder, and Councillor Allen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council.